Hello, I'm Gerald Schatten here in Pittsburgh, and I'm so sorry I'm not joining you in my beloved Colombia. Now, I've been asked to speak about the role in fertilization, and I love this opening slide because it has everything that one would want in here, including the sperm entering the egg. And you can see here the sperm tail, the midpiece with the mitochondria, the nucleus, the intact acrosome, and other components. And I will discuss that in some detail. But before I begin this, I need to say a few words about the extraordinary Colombian author, the Nobel laureate, I think you called him Garabrito. And he wrote about love in the time of cholera. We now are in love in the time of COVID. And a central theme of Gabriela Garcia Marquez's writings was solitude, was connectedness or loneliness. And one of his quotes is, "Tell him yes, even if you are dying of fear, even if you are sorry later, because whatever you do, you will be sorry all the rest of your life if you say no." And I think this is an important message for us right now. If there's any time in your life to take a risk, if you're not happy with your career, if you're not happy with your life, now is the time to look in the mirror and contemplate where you're going. This is not a dry rehearsal, as they say in acting. This is life. This is it. And our whole planet is suffering from this horrible pandemic. And it's interesting how Colombia just maybe squished out a little bit there. And this is National Geographic's Photograph of the Year, which tells us that every creature on Earth, except perhaps the virus, which was thriving, is suffering. I find this an extremely poignant image. And we all know that COVID tends to enter through the airways and goes into the lungs. There are different receptors in the upper and lower part of the lungs. But don't think that COVID is simply a pulmonary disorder. Every part of our body suffers from COVID. More than 25% of the people who have COVID within 90 days end up with a psychiatric diagnosis. And this is the famous painting of Edvard Munch. Munch was suffering from the flu in 1918. And he has paintings of himself suffering from that pandemic. And here you can see eloquently the psychosocial suffering from a pandemic. All of us are suffering. Now, fortunately, the coronavirus follows normal cell biological pathways. The egress is slightly different in that it uses lysosomes rather than typical endosomes, but we're learning a lot about the cell biology of COVID. And COVID is just the latest of the pandemics. We've had pandemics all the time in our history. Pandemics that killed half of the world's population, pandemics that killed a third of the world's pandemics. I don't know if in Colombia you have a song like we have here, where we sing, "Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posy, ashes, ashes, we all fall down." That song came up in 1386 for the Black Death. "Ring around the rosy" was the graveside. A pocket full of posies was the flowers they put in the corpse to try to cut the smell. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. The children are singing to dropping dead from the Black Death. This has been part of us now, and it will be part of us for the future. And you can see how many emerging diseases there are on the planet, and they are continuing to threaten us, and we need to get a hold of them. Almost all of them come from bats, and bats are amazing. A quarter of the animals on Earth, on mammals, are bats. But bats differ from you and me because of their mitochondria. To support the rapid flying of the bat, the mitochondria work very hard and they run at an elevated body temperature. And it's thought that that elevated body temperature keeps them in a mode where they can survive the viruses and serve as a reservoir for these viruses. So we have a real challenge in trying to get a handle on all of the viruses which could eventually affect us or the animals we eat or interact with that are in viral host animals now. There is work going forward in sequencing whatever is in a bat, and it's moving forward. But this is a diagram of our planet where there are areas where humans interact with bats quite frequently, and there's a high chance of an emerging pandemic. And let me tell you, you are not safe. You are not out of the woods. You need to be part of this global effort. Now, we have run training courses around the world. God only knows when we will be able to sit together as closely as possible. We've run courses all throughout the world. This is one in Jordan. There are upsides of these virtual meetings. Many of you would not have wanted to travel to see me here. Many of you might have had challenges with visa or difficulties in paying the stupid fees to cross borders. And there are wonderful benefits from the disability world, that in fact, it was the disabled people that came up with many of the technologies that we're using right now for this talk. And I think we need to acknowledge that those of us who may be hard of hearing, sight, mobility, need to be remembered and benefiting. And let me tell you, for my deaf students, it's extremely hard when you have a face mask on to read lips. I need to also tell you something that I am just so proud of. Netflix, which I know you get in Colombia, commissioned President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama to do 7 movies with important social messages. The first one they did was called Crip Camp, which is a derogatory term for handicapped people, crippled people. And it led to the American with Disability Act. And this movie, which I think will win an Academy Award this year, can be streamed on Netflix. And I can't tell you how I am beaming with pride, because this is the camp that I worked at during 2 summers back in the 1970s, or well, late 60s, early 70s. So Barack Obama made a movie about this deplorable camp that led to the American with Disabilities Act, which benefits many of us. And I'm very proud of that. If you are not in a career that is perfect for you, find an exit plan now. You can talk to your mentors. You can talk to your advisors. You can talk to your friends. You can email us. There are gringos and gringas ready to help. There is help out there. And we have run courses all around the world. This is in South Africa, right after Mr. Mandela came in. You can see it's a long time ago. I have color in my hair. And I would raise the issue of maybe we should think about, perhaps in 2023, having a course in Colombia. And if any of you think that a practical laboratory-based course would be beneficial, please get in touch with your hosts and perhaps me. We don't know exactly everything that's happening with how COVID is transmitted during pregnancy, nor do we know exactly whether there are any dangers with restarting ART, but the best evidence you can get from your clinicians, and it appears as if everybody should be vaccinated, and the dangers are minimal, especially if you're vaccinated. So I want to talk about the sperm today, and I will talk about many different parts of the sperm. And I want to start by talking about the fire that the sperm lights in the egg. Now, we just had the burial of Prince Philip, and you know there's this Prince Charming that's supposed to kiss Sleeping Beauty, and Sleeping Beauty wakes up. And in many ways, it's the kiss of the sperm that lights up the egg. And in fact, we can even see how the calcium wave starts up after the sperm touches the egg. So here we're imaging calcium. The sperm is touching the egg right here. This is not sped up. This is real time. And you're seeing a wave of free calcium sweeping across the egg. And once that wave of free calcium sweeps across the egg is forever transformed. It is now an activated egg. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. In fact, there is a flash of light that occurs with it. And the egg and you as an organism are now forever transformed. Something else that the egg has, which the sperm typically does not bring in, of course, is the mitochondria. Mom, you gave me something Dad never could. And there is so much evidence about maternal inheritance of mitochondria, including the analysis of mitochondria in Argentina and in Chile after those terrible disappearances in the junta periods. And that was all traced because of the maternal inheritance of mitochondria, going from grandmothers to maternal aunts and uncles and to offspring. Here we can see a mitochondrion as a sperm is entering a mammalian egg. And of course, there's the tail. Very, very rarely, there are paternal mitochondria. This is a family in China. And this is the actual paper, if anybody's interested, on the biparental inheritance of mitochondria in humans. But the paper has come into some question because it turns out there are also mitochondrial DNA sequences in the genome, in the nuclear genome. And it may be that these people were looking at mitochondrial DNA, but in the nucleus, not necessarily in the mitochondria. And so the field is still somewhat controversial. Something else that the sperm brings into the egg is the pair of centrioles. And this is something quite unique. The centrioles only appear to come in from the sperm, except under exceptional condition. Here is a human egg where we see a sperm tail inside of the egg. Here's the sperm nucleus and the egg nucleus. And you can see those pair of centrioles that the sperm brought into the egg. And let me show you what they do. The sperm centrioles enlarge a structure called the sperm aster in the human egg, and they move the sperm nucleus towards the egg center, and simultaneously they grab the egg nucleus and move it towards the center. Here's the second polar body nucleus and the mid body. This will be discarded. This is a human egg. And watch this video where the human egg here, you're seeing the aster is enlarging. When these microtubules contact the egg nucleus, it will be brought to the sperm nucleus. And then the sperm and egg nuclei will come towards the egg center. Watch the video. Here's the egg nucleus. Here's the sperm entering. See, the egg nucleus moved up to the sperm. And now watch as the sperm and egg nuclei move towards the center of the egg. The sperm centrioles duplicate and the egg divides from 1 to 2. Here's another one. Here's the sperm. Here's the egg nucleus. Watch this. The egg nucleus goes whoop, probably in as short as 7 minutes in humans. And the sperm and egg nuclei come together to the center of the egg. The centrioles separate to form the 2 poles of the bipolar spindle, and then the egg divides. One more. Here's the egg nucleus. Here's the sperm entering. Watch the egg nucleus. Zoop. There isn't really a sound effect. And the sperm and egg nuclei come to the egg center. You can see the astral rays spreading out, and the centrioles duplicate. For next division, they duplicate again, and the egg divides from 1 to 4. I'm sorry, 1 to 2, 2 to 4, etc. Here again in a human egg are the 2 centrioles duplicating. Here's a human egg at first mitosis, and the tail is always found at one of the poles of the sperm nucleus. So in a sense, the sperm brings in the centriole, but the centriole is sort of like a magnet, and it gathers all the maternal microtubule proteins, and it organizes this structure, and then it allows the egg to divide. There are cases that are pathological here where you have 2 sperm tail. So 2 sperm enter the egg, and each sperm brought in 2 centrioles. So you end with 4 centrioles, and you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4. Often this egg will divide from 1 to 4, sometimes 1 to 3, sometimes 1 to 2. But it is a pathological situation. You do not get twins from this, obviously. Recently, we found a new atypical form of a sperm centriole that's functional in humans. And I don't want to belabor this too much, but at the base of the sperm head, there is like a hyali basket of microtubules. And inside of those hyali baskets are two perpendicularly oriented centrioles. You can kind of get a sense of them here. Again, they are embedded deep within this, and it's only because of super resolution imaging that we're able to detect them. And then later, this sperm centriole, which we can see here, after it's entered an egg, splits, and we can see the duplicated centrioles at one pole and a single centriole at the other in the bipolar spindle. We're learning a lot about centrioles, and basically centrioles, unlike other structures in cells or eggs, seem to behave like Legos, that the egg has all these Lego pieces, or the cell has these Lego pieces, and in different situations, it can assemble them in different ways. And these form paracrystalline arrays, always at a 9 degrees orthogonal relationship with one another. It's a complicated crystallography, but it's an unusual form of transmissions or even inheritance. Something that you may not have thought about much is your epididymis. I was going to write a paper on how the least understood organ in a man's body is his epididymis. But my wife corrected me and said, no, I think it's the brain. But regardless, the epididymis is amazing. Our epididymises are 3 times longer than we are. So if we're 2 meters, the epididymis is 6 meters. In stallions, the epididymis can be 100 meters. And when the sperm enters that epididymis, it has to traverse it within about 10 days or 2 weeks. It would be the equivalent of me walking from New York to San Francisco in about 10 days. It's incredible that sperm are able to do it, and yet the sperm are modified from one end of the epididymis to the other. And let me show you that here, because when the sperm enter the epididymis, in mice, they have 2 centrioles, and as they move through the epididymis, through the caput, through the corpus, and out into the cotta and vas, they are modified first into 1 centriole, and then in mice, they're lost altogether. And it's extraordinary that our behavior seems to be dramatically shaped by the sperm as it traverses into the epididymis, because many molecules are picked up in the epididymis by sperm, including the molecules involved in epigenetic transmission. There are questions about whether those of us who have gone through horrible torture, genocide, starvation, pedophilia, I mean, so many horrible things that they're unimaginable. And it appears that we can transmit that to our children, our grandchildren, and even our great-grandchildren in both maternal and paternal fashions. And one way this has been shown is to follow sperm in males that have been abused, and then just take the sperm out of the epididymis, and using those sperm in totally normal mice demonstrate the epigenetic memory of trauma. And that epigenetic memory seems to be transmitted through endosomes or exosomes going in during transit through the epididymis. So the question, can we really inherit trauma, seems to be being answered. And it is important, it seems, that as the sperm traverses the epididymis, many of our epigenetic, our environmental memories are transmitted to our sperm at that time. So I'm going to summarize, I'm going to wrap up this talk now. I have another one later, but it's fascinating as we land on Mars, as we have a helicopter flying on Mars, sort of like the Wright brothers having airplanes flying on the Earth. We now have air transport flying on Mars, and already you see pediatricians writing, Mars ain't the kind of place to raise your kid. Ethical implications of pregnancy on missions to colonize other planets. I will not see this, but some of you will. Humans will be going to other planets, and Elon Musk, I don't think, will be the first. But let me thank you for your attention. God willing, we'll see one another again soon, face to face. We'll hopefully all be healthy, and I'm around if I can answer any questions. Gracias.